Hey, you should be open to page 74 in your workbook, which is talking about adding rational numbers. Now, we previously talked about how a rational number is any number that you can write as a fraction. So you would think, hey, we're adding and subtracting fractions here. But we're actually going to talk about a different sort of rational number. Another example of a rational number is any positive and negative integers. So any whole numbers that are positive and negative. So that's actually what we're going to be adding today. So they want us to use a number line to get us an understanding of how to do this. But this is when we think of our song same sign, add and keep, different signs subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. And I know my singing is fantastic. So here they give us an example. It says Pia measures the rise and fall of the tide next to a dock. At 10 a.m. the tide is 6 feet below sea level. The sea rises 9 feet in 12 hours, and then they want to know where's the tide at 10 p.m. because that's 12 hours later. So we're going to start at 0, which is at sea level, so always start at 0. Since it said it went 6 feet below, we're going to go 6 feet to the left because those are numbers going down, they're turning negative. So I'm at negative 6 right now. Then it says it rises 9. So since it's rising, we're going to go to the right. So move 9 spaces to the right, which will take me to 3. So after 12 hours, the sea level would be at 3 feet. The information at the bottom of this page just explains what I just said. So we are going to turn to the next page where we have our think about it. The think about it says, suppose the tide level is negative 4 feet. The tide then rises 4 feet in 6 hours. What is the tide level at then? How would you find your answer on a number line? So we would start at 0, because that's always our starting place. Then since it said it was negative 4 feet, we would move to the left 4 feet, because that's where the negatives are. So start at 0, move left 4 spaces. Then it says it's going to rise 4 feet. So since it's rising, we're going more towards the positives. So we're going to go to the right. So then move 4 spaces to the right. Well, if we started at 0, went left 4 spaces, then immediately went right 4 spaces, that just takes us back to 0. So then that would take you to 0 on the number line. So our tide level at that point would be 0. It's at sea level. Okay. The next one, or next question, it's actually going to take us it takes us the rest of this page and a little bit of the next page. It says the absolute value of a number is its distance from 0. The way I think about absolute value is just the positive version. So here, if we wanted the absolute value of negative 6, it's just 6. If you wanted the absolute value of 6, it's still 6 because it's 6 spaces from 0 on the number line. And we can actually use absolute values to add positive and negative numbers because that's where our song comes from, the same sign, add and keep, different signs subtract. So here it says the temperature in Anchorage, Alaska was negative 14 and the temperature dropped 12 degrees. What's the temperature at that point? So they started at 0 and it says this is the starting temperature negative 14 positive or negative? Well, that's pretty obvious. That's a negative. Is the temperature increasing or decreasing? Well, it says that it dropped 12, so that's decreasing. Will you represent this change with a positive or negative integer? Well, we would use negative since it represents a decrease. So anytime it's decreasing, you're going to use a negative. If it said increasing, we would use a positive. What addition expression represents these add-ins? So we were at negative 14, and then we dropped 12 since they wanted add-ins. We know we're going to add, and since we said drop 12, that was a negative 12, so negative 12. Will the sum of these add-ins be positive or negative? It's going to be negative because it was already negative and we're making it more negative because it's getting colder. Rewrite the expression using the absolute values of the integers and complete the equation. So we had negative 14, so I'm going to do the absolute value of negative 14. Plus, then we had negative 12, so absolute value of negative 12. So absolute value of negative 14 is 14, absolute value of 12 is 12, and 14 plus 12 is 26. Okay, so we are going to continue on with this problem on the next page. When adding two rational numbers that have the same signs, add the numbers and keep the same sign for the sum. So that's our same sign, add and keep. So the sum of negative 14 plus negative 12, 14 plus 12 is 26, and we keep the sign. So they were negative, so negative 26. So what was the temperature in Anchorage? Well, same answer, just add a label, negative 26 degrees Fahrenheit. Suppose you added negative 14 plus 12. What would be the sum then? Well, we know our song says different signs subtract, so negative 14 plus 12 would take me to negative 2. Does this answer make sense? Explain why or why not. Well, this answer wouldn't make sense with this problem specifically, so no. The reason is because the sum would be a higher temperature, and I'm just going to put temp for temperature. But we knew it needed to be lower since it was decreasing. So since we are at negative 14 and it was decreasing, we're not going to go up to negative 2. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, the next part, they're talking about additive inverse, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of this video. An additive inverse is when you add two numbers that have the same number, different signs, so they're opposites of each other, and when you do that, you always get 0. So they're going to give us a science problem, which is going to sound kind of difficult, but it's actually really easy using what we just learned. So it says atoms are composed of smaller particles that have electrical charges. A proton has a positive charge of +1. An electron has a negative charge of -1. A hydrogen atom has 1 proton and 1 electron. So we want to know what's the charge of the hydrogen atom. So to figure that out, what is the total charge of the protons in a hydrogen atom? Well, as 1 proton, each proton is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. What is the total charge of the electrons in a hydrogen atom? So it has 1 electron. Each electron is -1. So 1 times -1, -1. Write an addition sentence to add the charges of the particles. So we had 1 plus -1. They are additive inverses because same number, different signs. So that's 0. Adding a positive number and a negative number is the same as subtracting the negative number from the positive number. So 1 plus -1 can be written as 1 minus 1, which is also 0. So the charge of the hydrogen atom is going to be 0. Poor hydrogen atom doesn't have a charge. Okay, last 3 questions on this page. Use what you know about adding rational numbers to find these sums. So 5 plus -5. So same number, different signs, so they're additive inverses, which we know is 0. 3 plus -7. So different signs, subtract. 7 minus 3 is 4. Keep the sign of the bigger number. So 7 was bigger, it was negative, so -4. Number 3, -5 plus -9. Same sign, add and keep. So 5 plus 9 is 14, and they told us to keep the sign. Sign is negative, so -14. Okay, the last page that we are doing together says the distance from May's house and her school is 4 miles. The town library is 8 miles from May's house in the opposite direction. On Tuesday morning, May rode her bike from her house to school. After school, she rode her bike from school directly to the town library. So a lot of stuff happening. May is traveling a lot. So first she starts at her house. It says fill in the blanks to show the distance added. So her first ride, well, she went from her house to the school, which they showed us with this arrow, so it took us to 4, so she traveled 4 miles. The second ride, well, she's right here. She went 4 miles to get to 0, plus 8 miles more to get to the library. So 4 plus 8 would give me 12. Part B says complete this addition sentence with absolute values to find the total distance traveled. So first ride was 4. Her second ride was 12, but since it was in the opposite direction, we're going to put a negative 12 because we're going in the opposite direction on the number line. So I know that 4, absolute value is 4. Absolute value of negative 12 is 12. 4 plus 12 is 16. Absolute value of 16 is still 16. So her total distance traveled was 16 miles. Part C, is the answer a positive or a negative number? Well, 16 is obviously positive. So anytime we're talking about distance traveled, it can't be negative. Like, it doesn't make sense to travel a negative amount of distance. Your last question before you do the problems on your own. A submarine starts at sea level and sinks 1/5 of a mile. An hour later, it rises 1/5 of a mile. What is the depth in miles of the submarine after the hour? Explain how you know. So first, it sank 1/5 of a mile, so that's negative 1/5. And then it rose, so rising means add, so add 1/5. Well, same number, different signs, additive inverses, so that's 0. So the answer was 0, and we know this because negative 1/5, negative 1/5 and positive 1/5 are additive inverses because they are opposites. Which add to get 0. Okay, so we are done with the ones that we do together. So now you're going to do pages 78 through 80 on your own. Please let me know if you have any questions, and when you are done, you can put it back where it goes in the classroom.